Now, I'm Huples Cat. Do you have free will? Do I? Why don't we find out? Let's watch this video clip and count exactly how many times the players wearing white tops pass the ball between themselves. Can you concentrate well enough to actually count the number of passes players dressed in white make?
Count how many times the players wearing white pass the basketball. How many passes did you count?
I counted 15 and Kitty counted 13, though she suspected she had missed a few.
The correct answer is 15 passes. But did you see the gorilla?
Neither Kitty nor I saw the gorilla. To add to the complexity of the human mind, once we were told there was a gorilla, both me and Kitty had to go back and check the video we just watched and in fact verify there was a gorilla. Having verified that to be true, both Kitty and myself then had a memory, a very distinct memory, of seeing a black blur at some point during the video clip. Neither of us had this memory before we actually confirmed there was a gorilla. The findings from this video show that if you concentrate very hard on a task, other things, very important, very odd things, can actually go straight through you and your brain absolutely decides, I'm not going to register them. They become invisible to us. Okay then, well how long would you sit in a room that was filling full of smoke? Only a few seconds, and I bet nothing could alter that response time, eh? Okay, so this subject is actually spending at least 34 seconds here noticing the smoke and not responding to it. Why? Surely she's going to respond within a minute. Wow, what about after 10 minutes? After 20 minutes, there's still no response from our subject. But when the instructor comes in and says, you may leave, she basically runs out of that room as fast as she can. Interestingly, she doesn't feel connected to the people who've controlled her response, actually warn them to leave as well. Make no mistake, both you and I would react exactly the same as the subjects in these psychological experiments, unless we've been trained to think and act differently from normal people. It turns out the will of a human being isn't very free. Now, I've never learned to drive, but in my life I've never yet met somebody who is a bad driver. All the drivers I meet are good.
Ready, steady, and they're off.
Eddie, what are we expecting to see here?
Well, what we've got is a very simple mock-up of a single lane and busy motorway. Everyone's going to try and drive the same speed, but driver behaviour is not perfect. Some people go a little bit faster, some people go a bit slower, and the traffic will start to bunch up.
As Eddie predicted, some of the drivers start to vary their speeds and the distance between the cars changes. They begin to bunch up, and sure enough, a cluster of vehicles comes to a standstill. A phantom traffic jam has formed. When we speed up the footage, we can see this traffic jam starting to spread backwards around the circle. And once it starts, it just keeps going.
So all it takes really then is a couple of people to brake or something and that sets it all off?
Sure, if there are enough cars on the road, something very minor can get magnified into a traffic jam.
This was a repeat of an old experiment. It's always worth going back to the original source material for everything.
For the first time, Japanese researchers have conducted a real-life experiment that shows how some traffic jams appear for no apparent reason. They placed 22 vehicles on a single track and asked the drivers to cruise round at a constant speed of 30 kilometers an hour. At first, traffic moved smoothly, but soon the distance between cars started to vary and vehicles clumped together at one point on the track. The jam spread backwards around the track like a shockwave at a rate of about 20 kilometers an hour. Real-life jams move backwards at about the same speed.
So this one provided data we can actually use. The propagation of the slowdown actually goes backwards from the initial start of the slowdown by somebody over-braking at about 20 kilometers an hour. This is about 12 to 13 miles per hour. That's how fast it's going to propagate down a highway. If you're travelling on a highway and you hear there's a slowdown 10 kilometres ahead of you, how long before that slowdown reaches you? The answer is roughly 30 minutes. This gives you 30 minutes to get off the highway and start to use an alternative. Ah, come on, Huples. I'm never going to allow my free will to be crushed by groupthink. Let's do this experiment.
The experiment you will be taking part in today involves the perception of line length. Your task will be simply to look at the line here on the left and indicate which of the three lines on the right is equal to it in length.
If the group is wrong?
In the first test, the correct answer is 2.
1. 1. 1.
Two.
1. Once again, the correct answer is 2.
3. 3. 3.
3.
3.
What's going on?
The Asch experiment has been repeated many times, and the results have been supported again and again. We will conform to the group. Again, we're very social creatures. We're very much aware of what the people around us think. We want to be liked. We don't want to be seen to rock the boat, so we will go along with the group. Even if we don't believe what people are saying, we'll still go along.
1. 1. 1.
1. Group dynamics is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology.
1.
But is it? This clip gives the impression that 100% of people actually are overwhelmed in their own decision making. This is not so, as we shall see later. But first, let us all respond to an emergency situation in the great outdoors using our immense powers of free will.
If you were unfortunate enough to be the victim of a crime or taken ill unexpectedly, you might think that surrounded by all these people, someone would intervene. After all, isn't there safety in numbers? Psychologists say no. Research suggests that often a victim is less likely to receive assistance when surrounded by a group rather than a single bystander. When people are in a crowd, it's easier to pass the buck. It's what psychologists call the diffusion of responsibility.
You'd respond, right? Kitty and myself would. On more than one occasion, we've dashed across wherever we've been and actually helped people who've fallen or had accidents. We don't think about it, we respond. We were trained to do that from our hospital work. But someone's going to respond, right?
Liverpool Street Station in London, a busy thoroughfare for commuters. Unknown to these passers-by, Peter is an actor. As part of an experiment on bystander apathy, he's pretending to be ill.
Help! Help!
How long before he gets help?
Please, somebody. Help! Help me, son. Please help me.
Helping would be inconvenient or even risky. He lies there for more than 20 minutes and no one raises an eyebrow.
Please, somebody help me.
So for over 30 minutes, despite audibly asking for help, no help is given. What is it with Londoners, or New Yorkers, or Californians, or Toronto people? It's a numbers thing. In a small town, chances are you know people and you're going to be judged if you don't help. In a large city, who's judging you for not helping? Why is this happening?
It's always very distressing to watch situations like this where people are obviously suffering and no one's actually helping them. But what we have here is two conflicting rules. One is the rule that we ought to help, and the other is the rule that we ought to do what everybody else is doing. And here you have effectively a group of strangers who are exerting the pressure not to intervene, not to help. And it's very difficult to rebel.
Okay, people don't like men anymore. If it's a young woman lying there, people are going to respond, right?
Ruth, another actor, takes Peter's place. How long before she receives help? Four minutes later, and 34 people have passed without stopping.
Well, people don't really want to know. They just haven't got the time. Well, they have got the time, they just don't want to get involved.
Unwittingly, these strangers have silently formed a temporary group with a rule: don't get involved. They're afraid to stand out from the crowd and won't take action if no one else does.
Okay, unlike the male victim, they actually used a male sitting close to her, reading the paper, having no interest in her, to actually set up the conditions where people feel that they're part of the group that says, don't help. Without this staging, help would have come quicker, right? I think it's fascinating to think about this, because all psychological experiments, and a lot of them are very famous, a lot of them, like this one, have inherent flaws in both the presentation from the media and also how they construct the parameters.
This woman has clearly spotted Ruth, but she conforms to the rule and does nothing. Watch what happens, though, when someone else helps.
You all right? You all right?
Yes, thank you.
Sure, you look a bit clicky, you know what I mean?
She suddenly finds herself in a different group with a new rule: to help.
Do you want to sit up?
She don't look well, does she?
You all right? Yeah. Yes, you are.
First I thought she was dead. Then I sort of checked to see if she was breathing or not. And I looked around and I couldn't believe that no one had noticed her, because there was a bloke sat there just absorbed in reading a newspaper.
Okay, so a non-threatening victim may or may not get help, but this lady looked like she was dead for over 4 minutes outside a busy train station. But if the conditions had been the same as the guy, if there'd been nobody there pretending to ignore her right from the beginning, and if she'd actually called for help, would help have come quicker or later? What do you think? Let me know in the comments. People tell me America and Canada have no social classes or hierarchies. Everyone is equal here. I don't agree with that at all. But if in London our victim is upper class, what's going to happen? Do you think he'll get help faster if he looks rich?
This time, Peter's dressed as a respectable gentleman. Now that his dress is in keeping with those around him, how long before he's rescued?
Hello, sir. How are you today?
I'm all right.
6 seconds. She even calls him sir. And suddenly, everyone's a good Samaritan.
Do you suffer from epilepsy?
No.
Why you're lying on the floor in the rain?
Because he's part of the right group. Everyone wants to help.
I would just hate to be in his position of feeling ill and nobody helping and walking past, so I'd just like to check that he was okay.
And I thought, well, it's wet, so he must really be ill because he's going to ruin his suit anyway.
It's the same actor. The only thing that's changed here is his clothing's more expensive. But lower class people walked next to him when he was dressed as a lower class person without helping him. The privilege of perceived class is very real in London. Make no mistakes, I'm a Brit living in Canada. It's very real in North America as well. I'm not talking about race here, I'm talking about social class, income level. Okay, let's further demolish the whole concept that we actually have free will. Let's go back to the Asch test.
The experiment you'll be taking part in today involves the perception of lengths of lines. As you can see here, I have a number of cards, and on each card there are several lines. Your task is a very simple one. You're to look at the line on the left and determine which of the 3 lines on the right is equal to it in length. All right, we'll proceed in this order. You'll give your answer.
Only one of the people in the group is a real subject, the 5th person with the white t-shirt. The others are confederates of the experimenter and have been told to give wrong answers on some of the trials. The experiment begins uneventfully as subjects give their judgments.
2.
2.
2.
2.
2. 3.
3. 3. 3.
But on the 3rd trial, something happens.
2.
2.
2.
2.
2.
The subject denies the evidence of his own eyes and yields to group influence.
Would you?
Asch found subjects went along with the group on 37% of the critical trials.
Okay, let's get real here. 37% of the responses are controlled by the group. That means 63% of all the subjects expressed free will and told the truth, despite what the entire group was saying to them.
But he found through interviews that they went along with the group for different reasons.
One. They must be right. There are 4 of them and 1 of me.
One.
This subject's yielding is based on a distortion of his judgment. He genuinely believes that the group is correct.
Low self-esteem, low belief in your intellect, low belief in your right to make the correct decision. I would argue the people around you who are answering incorrectly are dressed considerably more richer than you. I think the percentage agreement would rise, and vice versa. But they found another reason to cause this.
1.
2. 1. 2.
2. I know they're wrong, but why should I make waves?
2.
In this case, the subject knows he is right, but goes along to avoid the discomfort of disagreeing with the group. Here, the distortion is at the level of his response.
2. 2.
Some people are just going to give the answer they want. They're not going to make waves. They couldn't care less about the accuracy of the test. This is very true in opinion polls. Can being in a team make resistance to groupthink easier?
In the previous experiment, the naive subject stood alone against the group. In this variation, Asch gave the naive subject a partner, here seated in the 3rd position, who also gives the correct response.
1.
2.
1. 2.
With a partner, yielding drops to only 5% of the critical trials compared to 37% without a partner.
Wow, 5%, or 1 out of every 20 times, the subject still gives the incorrect answer, despite having one of the group back him up with the right answer. They did appear only to study white males in this study as well. Why do you think the subjects here were more resistant to groupthink?
Although subjects report warmth and good feeling toward the partner, they typically deny that he played a role in their own independence. The partnership variation shows that much of the power of the group came not merely from its numbers, but from the unanimity of its opposition. When that unanimity is punctured, the group's power is greatly reduced.
So people are going to be influenced by misinformation that's consistent, much more so than misinformation that's inconsistent. The steady stream of lies is ineffective, but the steady stream of a specific lie is highly effective. Still, if everyone tells you 2 + 2 = 5, only 37% of people are actually going to start to agree with the group. If it was media or advertising based, I suspect 37% agreement would rise over time, not lower. The more often the lie is told, the more people are going to start to believe it or just agree with it rather than make waves. If one person in the group tells you the true answer, you're still going to give the false answer 5% of the time. That's quite scary. It turns out there's just 2 types of false agreement here.
Sometimes we go along with the group because what they say convinces us they are right. This is called informational conformity. But sometimes we conform because we are apprehensive that the group will disapprove if we are deviant. This is called normative conformity. The strength of the normative factor is shown in another variation carried out by Asch. In this variation, the subject is told that because he had arrived late, he would have to write his answers. Subjects in this private response experiment are exposed to the same amount of misleading information as other subjects, but they are immune from any possible criticism by the group.
1.
And this enormously reduces the pressure to conform. Conformity drops by 2/3. Asch's experiment is a classic. It reveals how people will deny what they see and submit to group pressure. It allows us not only to observe conformity, but to study the conditions that increase or reduce its occurrence.
So for decades, psychologists have been studying how to subvert and control you, how to end your free will. Mostly it's to buy products, but only a fool would assume that they have free will and they're not being controlled. When people say 100% that they support a position, do they? Can they make that logical decision? Do they have the free will to be able to do so? Do you? Next time!
It is May 1962. An experiment is being conducted in the Elegant Interaction Laboratory at Yale University. If in this study an anonymous experimenter could successfully command adults to subdue a 50-year-old man and force on him painful electric shocks against his protests, one can only wonder what government, with its vastly greater authority and prestige, can command of its subjects.
The influence to subvert free will is very real in 2024. Governments, charities, media organisations, corporations, everybody's at it. But anyway, thanks for watching and letting me subvert your free will and control you just for the length of this video. Take it easy and relax and enjoy life, because you only got one and you might as well be happy. Doodles! This has been a 2024 Wolfie Saw the Gorilla production.